Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James Creedon. These are our headlines from across the continent this evening. It's another blow for the World Health Organization as it oversees the global response to COVID-19. Authorities in Burundi have expelled the organisation's representative in the country. We'll bring you all the latest on that at the top of the show. It's considered one of the most stable democracies in West Africa. Benin is gearing up for local elections this Sunday, but COVID-19 restrictions are a major obstacle for campaigning. A little bit more on that a bit later on. And the whereabouts of 3 opposition activists in Zimbabwe is currently a mystery. The 3 women were arrested during a protest over food shortages yesterday. We'll hear more from our correspondent in Harare. Thanks for watching. Now, bad news for the embattled World Health Organization. After weeks of bashing from the Trump administration, the Geneva-based body has now had its representative in Burundi expelled. The authorities there have accused the organisation of interference in its management of the COVID-19 crisis. The East African nation is voting in presidential elections next week, with all issues highly politicised as a result. The World Health Organization says it is owed an explanation for the decision. Laurent Berstecker has more.
Taken aback by Burundi's decision to expel its staff, the World Health Organization is demanding answers.
We are in communication with the government of Burundi to clarify and understand the reasoning behind this decision they have taken. And we are in the meantime then working with the UN system in the country to organize the departure of our staff.
Burundian authorities had already tried to expel the World Health Organization team last month, accusing them of interfering with the country's response to the coronavirus pandemic. The attempt was unsuccessful, but the government didn't back down, and on Tuesday the 4 experts were declared persona non grata without further explanation. The decision, which was criticized by the UN and the African Union, comes days before Burundi is set to hold a presidential election, with the country defying calls to postpone the vote due to the sanitary crisis. Burundi, one of the rare countries in the region not to impose a lockdown over the pandemic, is among the least affected by COVID-19, with only 27 recorded cases. Yet many medical professionals suspect the true infection rates to be much higher than the official numbers.
To Benin next, where mass testing for COVID-19 has been rolled out across the country with, unsurprisingly, a spike in the number of detected cases. All of this is taking place during the build-up to local elections this weekend. But gatherings of over 50 people are not allowed. Candidates have had to adapt their campaigning as a result. This report by Emmanuel Soje and Raphael Entale.
A sparse crowd has turned out for this year's election campaign. It's smaller than those of former elections, but these are unprecedented times. As a precautionary measure against COVID-19, Beninese authorities have banned candidates from having any direct contact with the public.
Il n'y a plus les meetings, mais nous, les crieurs publics, on nous a sollicités. On est là pour passer dans tous les vents et les recoins de Cotonou pour parler de notre candidat.
Luc Setonji Atrokpo is running for mayor of Cotonou. Today, he and his running mates are touting for votes around the 13th district of the country's largest city. A security convoy is close by to stop a crowd forming. The conditions are not ideal for politicians trying to convince their electorate.
Nous avons appris à faire campagne dans une certaine ferveur, dans une certaine fête, avec une forte mobilisation, avec des milliers de personnes qui nous entourent dans les caravanes. Aujourd'hui, et à juste titre, le gouvernement a souhaité que nous fassions les choses en respectant les règles.
It's a race from door to reach as many people as possible, in groups of less than 50 at a time. Voters allowed to approach candidates have been carefully pre-selected.
When you take a neighbourhood, if there is a women's group, instead of gathering all the women, you call on 2 or 3 people who represent those groups. Then you multiply the message through social networks, through the WhatsApp forums. They are working very well in Africa.
Ganvier is a city of huts on stilts built on the water, about 40 minutes from Cotonou. Access to the internet or television is difficult for thousands of residents here. Many rely on a traditional town crier for updates. He's campaigning for Hubert Wesu, who's running for district chief. Even if the number of COVID-19 cases is on the rise, Wesu doesn't want the elections to be postponed.
On a déjà dépensé, celle-là, ça va nous faire une perte. Donc il faut qu'on fasse ça le dimanche pour qu'on finisse ça avec ça.
Authorities say that strict health measures will be put in place at the polling stations, but the fear of catching coronavirus and the opposition's call for a boycott of the elections could impact voter turnout.
Time now for news in brief from across Africa. Niger has announced the end of a nighttime curfew on the capital, Niamey, and the reopening of places of worship. The Muslim-majority country had shut down mosques in late March, but those measures had already been eased for Ramadan. Eritrean activists sued the EU on Wednesday and asked it to hold €80 million in aid to the East African nation. The Dutch-based organisation Human Rights for Eritreans said the money funded a scheme built on forced labour. The EU funds a major road renovation project in the country. The activists condemned the system of conscription put in place for that project, saying it amounts to indefinite military service and forces thousands of Eritreans to flee the country each year. In Burkina Faso, a prosecutor has launched an investigation after 12 people died during the same night while under police detention. They were arrested for suspected terrorism-related offences in the east of the country. Now, some weeks ago, Human Rights Watch flagged a similar incident of 31 suspected executions. Burkina Faso has been battling Islamist insurgents since 2017 in the northeast and east of the country. To the Zimbabwe next, where concerns are growing about the whereabouts of 3 female opposition officials. They were reportedly arrested yesterday. The 3 were supporters of the opposition Movement for Democratic Change party. They had been staging a demonstration over worsening hunger in the country. Police have since denied that the 3 women are being held in custody. Here's more from Ryan Truscott in Harare.
The 3 missing officials include the Movement for Democratic Change MP for Harare West, Joanna Mamombe. She's a well-known opposition member because at just 26, she's one of the youngest MPs in Parliament. She and 2 other officials were among several MDC supporters who took part in a demonstration in Warren Park, which is a fairly low-income suburb in the west of the city. The protest was over food shortages that are growing here due to a drought and the lockdown to prevent coronavirus. And this is where it gets murky. The National Police spokesman, Paul Nyati, initially confirmed to local media, including state media, that they had been arrested. He said it was for holding an illegal demonstration and breaching the lockdown rules, which are now into their 8th week. The first reports said the 3 women had been detained at Harare Central Police Station, but their lawyers didn't find them there, and they still haven't today. Western embassies are expressing concern. The EU delegation to Harare has urged the authorities to establish the whereabouts of the 3, as have the UK and US embassies. And now the police are saying that they don't actually have any MDC members in their custody. The MDC says that these 3 officials are the victims of abduction, something that has happened to prominent government critics in the past. In the meantime, MDC lawyers have filed a court application to compel the police to produce the 3 officials within 12 hours. And this is all coming against a backdrop of rising political tensions. A court recently ruled that the MDC President Nelson Chamisa is not the legitimate leader of the MDC, and there was an attempt by the police to take over the party's headquarters last week. So if these officials aren't found soon, I think those tensions are going to rise further.
Now, torture, murder and war crimes, that's the sorry list of accusations levelled against Guillaume Soro in a Paris courtroom last week. Soro led a rebellion in Ivory Coast that saw the country descend into civil war. He's currently standing as a presidential candidate. The charges against him were brought by French and Ivorian nationals. Amongst those he's accused of killing is Ibrahim Koulibaly, a political rival. France 24 went to meet one of the plaintiffs in the case. Let's take a look.
It is a case that harks back to one of the darkest periods of Ivorian history. The affair brought before the French justice system concerns the death of 5 people, including Ibrahim Koulibaly, one of Guillaume Soro's rivals from back when the now presidential candidate was head of the rebel army, the Force Nouvelle. Koulibaly died in 2011, not long after the fall of President Laurent Gbagbo. The other killings being examined happened in Korogo and Bouaké in 2004. France 24 spoke with a source close to Kassoum Bamba, a rebel commander executed after his camp was captured in Bouaké.
Son corps a été mutilé et on a coupé sa tête le cœur, on a enlevé son cœur, on lui a enlevé les parties génitales et ils ont emporté tout ça. Donc il a eu vraiment une des morts les plus atroces. C'est pour ça que nous avons décidé aujourd'hui de poser plainte.
More than 15 years after Bamba's death, he thinks now is the right time to push the case against Soro.
On ne pouvait pas le faire avant, parce que Soro il était Premier ministre, après il était le président du Parlement, et aujourd'hui, comme il est hors du pays, il est en France, nous avons préféré porter plainte en France.
Soro's defence team say the case against him does not hold up and is simply aimed at discrediting him as a presidential candidate.
Cette candidature dérange parce qu'elle est populaire. Et donc, sous des artifices judiciaires, on essaye de discréditer une candidature politique. Cette plainte s'inscrit dans une démarche et dans un calendrier politique. Toutes les accusations qui y figurent nous paraissent calomnieuses, inexactes et, on peut le dire, purement opportunistes. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons déposé plainte contre les plaignants du chef de dénonciation calomnieuse.
None of the Force Nouvelle leaders have ever been trialed before. At this point, we are still waiting for a judgment from the prosecutor in Paris.
All right, that brings us to the end of this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching and good night.